Nobody clapped. No one posted about it. No interview, no headline, no launch party, no confetti falling from the ceiling. Somewhere right now, there's a person sitting in a room you'd never look twice at, driving a car you wouldn't remember 5 minutes after seeing it, wearing clothes you'd forget by tomorrow morning, who is quietly worth more than most publicly traded companies on your stock exchange. And the wildest part isn't the number, it's this. Nobody around them has any idea. Not their neighbors, not their old classmates, not their coworkers from a decade ago, not even, in some cases, their own extended family. This is the story of how a person goes from $0 to $500 million without a single person noticing until it's already done. Not because they were hiding a crime, not because they were ashamed of the money, but because silence was the strategy from the very first day. If you've ever wondered what real wealth actually looks like, not the version they sell you in a rented Lamborghini video, not the version with a fake watch and a private jet borrowed for 1 hour of filming, stay with me until the end, because stage 6 is where everything changes, and almost nobody making these videos ever explains that stage correctly. Before we even get into the stages, it's worth asking why this story matters at all. It's not because you need $500 million to have a good life. Most people never will, and that's fine. It's because the thinking behind this journey is completely different from how most people are taught to think about money. Once you understand that thinking, you start noticing it everywhere. In the quiet coworker who never talks about money, in the neighbor whose house never changes, but whose kids went to expensive schools, and in the person who always seems calm about finances while everyone else panics at the first sign of trouble. This isn't really a story about $500 million. It's a story about a mindset that happens to end up there, almost by accident, decades later. Let's rewind to the very beginning, to the moment there was nothing at all, not a plan, not a dollar, not a single sign of what was coming. At $0, nobody is watching you. Nobody cares what you're doing on a random Tuesday night. And that, as strange as it sounds, is the single biggest advantage a person can have at this point in their life. While everyone else is spending their 20s trying to look successful, the person who actually becomes wealthy is doing something almost embarrassingly boring. They're studying, quietly, alone, with no audience and no applause waiting for them at the end of the night. They're not asking, how do I look rich this weekend? They're asking one question over and over in the back of their mind while everyone else is scrolling. What do wealthy people own that broke people only ever rent? Wealthy people own businesses. Broke people rent jobs, trading hours for money that resets back to zero every month. Wealthy people own appreciating assets. Broke people rent lifestyles, cars, apartments, vacations, subscriptions to a life they don't actually own. Wealthy people own their time. Broke people rent it away, one paycheck, one shift, one Sunday night dread at a time. Think about how strange this actually is. Two people can earn the exact same income in the exact same city, working the exact same number of hours. One ends the year with nothing except memories, receipts, and more credit card debt. The other ends the year owning a small piece of something that will still be generating money 5 years from now. Same income, completely different future. The difference was never the amount of money coming in, it was the decision about where that money was allowed to go. There's also a myth worth killing right here. People think silent wealth builders are secret geniuses or had an unfair advantage. Most of them didn't. What they had was a willingness to feel behind, to feel boring, and to miss out on things everyone else was doing without any guarantee it would pay off. Imagine this person at 22 years old sitting at a family gathering. Someone asks, "So, what's the plan? What are you actually doing with your life?" The honest answer would be, "I'm saving almost everything and learning how money works." Nobody is impressed. It sounds boring, it sounds like nothing, but the plan was never built for their approval. At this stage, there is no money to speak of. There are only decisions, and the first decision is always the same. Stop spending energy trying to look rich. Start spending energy trying to become financially unrecognizable later. Nobody claps for stage one. Nobody ever does, because there's nothing to see yet. But this is where the entire empire is actually built, in invisible rooms, on invisible nights, following an invisible plan. Here's the truth almost nobody tells you. By the time people finally notice your success, you're already 5 stages ahead of where they think you are, and stage 2 is where the first real money starts moving. This stage was never about getting rich, it was about proving to yourself one thing, that you can turn effort into money without needing anyone's permission. Maybe it's a skill sold online after work. Maybe it's a small resale business running from a spare room. Maybe it's months of overtime while everyone else spends weekends chasing temporary fun. It doesn't matter what the vehicle is. What matters is the habit being built. Spend less than you earn, immediately turn the difference into something that can grow without you. Most people who reach $10,000 make one huge mistake. They buy the watch, they buy the trainers, they buy the status symbol. They post it online for people who will forget it within an hour. The people who build real wealth think differently. They look at the same $10,000 and quietly tell themselves, this isn't spending money, this is seed money. This is where the paths separate forever. One person buys something that loses value the moment they leave the shop. The other buys a future nobody else can see yet. Patience gets tested here for the first time. $10,000 sitting quietly and growing doesn't feel exciting. There's no applause, no compliments, no excitement. It simply compounds while every instinct tells you to spend it. Learning to leave boring money alone is the real skill. The money itself is almost a side effect of the discipline. There's usually a moment that tests the whole plan. A costly wedding, a car repair, a friend with a can't-miss investment opportunity. Every situation feels like an exception. The people who succeed treat almost none of them as exceptions. They simply keep following the plan, quietly, even when nobody understands why. This is also the stage where silence becomes a weapon. The people around them still think they're broke. That assumption becomes the perfect cover for what comes next. Stage 3 is where money stops being about hustle and starts being about leverage. Somewhere around 6 figures, something quietly changes. The money itself starts working faster than the person does. This is the leverage stage. The seed money finally gets pointed at assets instead of expenses. Maybe it's a small stake in a business. Maybe it's a first property bought quietly. Maybe it's an investment portfolio built 1 month at a time. From the outside, almost nothing looks different, but underneath, everything is changing. This is also the most fragile point in the entire journey. One flashy purchase, one ego-driven investment, one decision made to impress people. That's all it takes to erase years of invisible progress. The people who make it through this stage become even more boring. While friends are financing expensive lifestyles, they are quietly reinvesting almost everything they earn, again and again, without telling anyone. There's also a kind of loneliness here that nobody talks about. You can't celebrate with the people around you because they don't understand why you're leaving $100,000 untouched instead of spending it. You can't explain the plan because the plan only works if it stays invisible. So you keep going, quietly, trusting that your future self will thank you. This is usually where the first real setback happens. A market crash, a difficult year in business, a property repair that wipes out months of savings. Most people quit here. They tell themselves it wasn't working anyway. The people who succeed treat setbacks as information, not failure. They adjust, then they keep moving. By the time they reach $100,000, they don't feel rich. They don't even look rich, but something has changed forever. Money is now making money, even while they sleep, even on days they do absolutely nothing. That's when the empire begins to grow almost on its own. The next stage is the first million. This is the stage everyone talks about, but almost nobody actually sees it happen. Because by the time someone discovers you're a millionaire, you've usually stopped acting like the money is new. If people ever find out, something interesting happens. Relatives suddenly become interested. Old friends reconnect. People begin doing maths about your life that was never their business. That's exactly why the smartest builders stay quiet. Same car, same house, same conversations. Nothing changes on the outside, because the moment it does, privacy disappears. Imagine two different people reaching their first million. One announces it: new car, luxury holidays, social media posts. Within months, they're getting loan requests, business ideas, and constant attention. The other person changes nothing. No announcements, no celebrations. The money keeps growing in complete privacy. Behind the scenes, however, everything is expanding. Multiple income streams, assets producing income every month, a financial life that no longer depends on one employer or one salary. The biggest change isn't confidence. Plenty of poor people are confident, and plenty of millionaires still worry. The real change is the relationship with risk. Leaving a job becomes easier. Walking away from a bad deal becomes easier. Saying no becomes easier. Not because they're fearless, because desperation has disappeared. The first million isn't the finish line. It's simply the point where the question changes. Instead of asking, "Can I build wealth?" the question becomes, "How big can this become?" After that comes an entirely different game, the holding company era. At this point, wealth stops looking like one successful person. It starts looking like a system. Instead of personally owning everything, smart builders begin creating structures that own the assets for them. A holding company, one business owning parts of other businesses, properties, investments, different income streams, everything organized under one structure. Why is that important? Because a holding company doesn't care about attention. It doesn't post online. It doesn't attend parties. It doesn't need recognition. It simply owns assets quietly and efficiently. At this stage, the individual becomes less important than the system they built. Businesses continue running. Properties continue generating rent. Investments continue growing. The owner could disappear for months and the machine would keep operating. The game also changes from creating to acquiring, buying competitors, buying suppliers, buying buildings. Each acquisition makes the next acquisition easier because the structure itself produces the capital needed to keep expanding. Time changes too. Earlier stages were about survival, working harder, saving more, making sacrifices. Now the work becomes different. Fewer meetings, fewer daily decisions, more reading, more reviewing numbers, more saying no than saying yes. By 10 million, most people would retire. By 50 million, silent builders are still thinking about the next acquisition because wealth has stopped being about money. It's become about control. Control over time, control over decisions, control over opportunities. And the final stage is where it stops looking like personal success altogether and becomes something much larger. At this level, almost nobody who knew this person back at the beginning would recognize what they've actually built, because there's almost nothing left to see. No mansion tours, no supercar reveal videos, no day-in-my-life content. Real silent wealth isn't hidden because of shame. It's hidden because attention becomes a liability. Every dollar you display invites questions. Every question becomes a distraction. At this stage, the holding company owns pieces of many different businesses across different industries. It owns real estate, it owns investments. Everything is diversified so that no single downturn can destroy the entire structure. The person behind it all still looks ordinary. They're still standing in the supermarket like everyone else, still driving a normal-looking car, still living quietly. Because the philosophy that got them there never changed. Patience, invisibility, relentless reinvestment, year after year. Modern culture rewards attention. More followers, more likes, more proof. But the biggest fortunes were rarely built by the loudest people. They were built by people who understood one simple truth. Attention is expensive. The more attention you buy, the more privacy you lose. At this level, wealth stops being about lifestyle. It becomes about permanence, building something that lasts beyond one lifetime, making decisions for children and grandchildren who haven't even been born, creating systems that continue growing long after the founder is gone. 500 million pounds doesn't announce itself. It doesn't have to. The numbers speak for themselves. Somewhere along the way, another realization appears. Money stopped being the goal years ago. It became the result of something much simpler: freedom. Freedom from being controlled by circumstances. After a certain point, another £1,000,000 doesn't change daily life very much. What it changes is possibility. It keeps more doors open. It creates more choices. Before we finish, there are 3 patterns that almost every silent wealth builder shares. The first is multiple income streams. They never rely on just one source of income. Early on, it might be a job and a side business. Later, it becomes businesses, investments, rental properties, and other assets. The goal is simple: never allow one bad month to destroy everything. The second pattern is resisting lifestyle inflation. They don't increase spending every time income increases. Most people upgrade their lives first. Silent builders upgrade their assets first. The gap between what they could spend and what they actually spend is what funds the entire empire. The third pattern is becoming comfortable with being underestimated. They let relatives believe they're still struggling. They let old friends assume nothing special happened. They don't waste energy correcting people, because correcting people attracts attention. Attention brings pressure. Pressure creates unnecessary problems. Put those 3 habits together, and wealth starts looking less like luck and more like discipline. Multiple income streams, a controlled lifestyle, a comfort with being underestimated. Now, let's bring this back to you. If you're starting with almost nothing, don't worry about 500 million pounds. Don't even worry about 1 million pounds. Focus on your first 1,000 pounds. Save it, protect it, don't touch it. That single habit becomes the foundation for everything else. If you already have savings, the question changes. Is your money working, or is it simply sitting there losing value over time? And if you already own businesses, investments, or property, then the next question is about structure. Are your assets organized? Are they protected? Are they built to keep growing no matter what happens to any single investment? No matter where you are today, the formula stays exactly the same. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference into assets that grow without you. Stay quiet about it for longer than feels comfortable. That's the entire formula. It was never complicated. It was simply difficult to follow consistently. Here's one final detail that's easy to miss. If you watch the same person on an ordinary Wednesday during Stage 2, Stage 4, and Stage 6, the day would probably look almost identical. Wake up, check the numbers, not for excitement, just out of habit. Eat breakfast, do focused work, exercise, read, go to bed. Nothing dramatic. At Stage 2, that routine looks like discipline. At Stage 6, it still looks exactly the same. Because the routine wasn't the price paid for wealth. The routine was the machine that created it. The moment someone abandons that routine, many fortunes begin to fall apart. The daily habits never really change, only the size of the numbers changes. Every stage of this journey had one thing in common: not luck, not inheritance, not one lucky break. Silence. The silence to protect the first 10,000 pounds. The silence to protect the first £1,000,000. The silence to keep building while everyone else looked for recognition. Here's the truth. The loudest people talking about money are rarely the wealthiest people in the room. The wealthiest people are usually the ones you'd never suspect, and that's exactly how they planned it. Somewhere right now, someone is standing at stage 1. No money, no audience, no proof that the plan will work, just a decision. Maybe that person is watching this video after a long day at work, wondering whether any of this really applies to them. It does. It always has. These stages don't require extraordinary talent. They don't require perfect timing. They require one simple decision repeated over and over again for years. That's the secret. It was never hidden. It just wasn't advertised because the people living it never needed anyone else to know. And one day, years from now, the people around them will suddenly notice the result. By then, it will already be too late to question how it happened. If this stage-by-stage breakdown changed the way you think about real wealth, quiet, patient, and invisible, make sure you're subscribed. In the next video, we'll break down how a holding company actually works, step by step, and why it's one of the most misunderstood wealth-building tools. Stage 1 starts with a single decision. The only question left is, when will you make yours?